All right. We have Rob Nickell on the. Did I pronounce that right, Rob? Your last name?
That's right. Yeah, that's exactly right.
And we're doing an interview about virtual assistants or virtual work or offshoring your work and efforts. But give us a 30,000-foot view of you and your company and what you do.
Yeah, I'm the founder and CEO of RocketStation. We are a business process outsourcing company. What that means is we do all the back office stuff that nobody likes to do. So from inside sales to admin to bookkeeping to administrative work to executive assistants and virtual staffing. We're dedicated teams. We're not W-2s. We're not 1099. It's simply a dedicated staff through a service contract. So it takes all the labor liability, all the HR issues that come with hiring people, and we like to think of ourselves as the easy button to productivity. So from your ideas to implementation, that's what we like to be, the bridge for that.
And that goes hand in hand with the first interview that I did was with Craig Campbell, and one of Craig's sticking points was, his advice to everybody was to work on your business and not in your business as much as possible. So that plays into it, because I'm going to tell on myself that over the weekend, I do design work. I do all kinds of stuff. I have this huge toolbox, and everybody thinks I'm really resourceful because I've just had all of these painful learning experiences through the years. But I went through on a kind of a fun channel or a fun website that I'm creating, and I decided to do my own logos, banner logos and everything, because nobody can do it better than me.
That's right.
And I knew exactly what I wanted, but I didn't trust anybody to do it but myself. And I wanted to play around with a couple of ideas. So 6 hours later, I created a banner logo and an icon for this website. And in reflection, I looked at it and I said, wow, I could have paid somebody $50 to achieve the same thing. And I just cost myself 6 hours of my time that I'll never get back. How productive was that?
Yeah, I mean, for us, that we think it's all about utilization, right? I fully understand there's a few things that you just absolutely want to do throughout your day, but the truth is, pretty much everything today is done on a phone or computer. So if you're the one actually taking on those tasks, you're valuing yourself at a very low dollar per hour. And I know that's something that a lot of people like to say, but that's the truth, right? Is you spent 6 hours. I mean, what is your time worth? You could have been doing a lot of other things, a lot more a lot higher dollar tasks, things that could be a lot more productive and add a lot more value in your business. So yeah, there may be a few things that only you can do, right, Bradley? Like there's only a few things that you're the absolute best at, but most of that is really a myth. Most of it's about control, because we invest so much in our business. We live, breathe, eat, sleep, go to bed stressed out every night, wake up stressed out every morning, just trying to get stuff done. So if you can take a step back, look at what you're actually trying to do all day, see what highest and best use of your time is, that's where we really think the power is. I'm not trying to take everything off of you. And the idea of working on your business than in your business, yeah, that's great. But there's going to be some things you have to do every day, right? And if you spend those few minutes thinking about your business, and we like to put everybody through what we just call a discovery phase, where we really map out your entire business, because what that does is it provides a lot of insight into what's actually happening all day. And do you have kids, Bradley?
Well, mine is grown. I only have one.
So when you ask kids how their day was, they're like, "Oh, it was good." And if you try to ask them what they did all day, they almost can't tell you. You have to like pull it out. And well, I had art class in the morning, and then we had music in the afternoon. We're no different, right? If I was to ask you what you did all day, you're like, "What do you mean? I did a million different things." But most people aren't really structured and organized to get through their day in a really efficient way. And we think anytime there's urgency, anytime there's chaos, anytime there's too much going on, that just means there's not enough structure, there's not enough systems, there's not enough processes in your business for you to have more consistency than urgency. So we like to start with the end in mind, define what success looks like, and then take all those low dollar an hour tasks that you actually end up doing all day long just to put out fires. And we put systematic approach to that. That way it's just about progress. It's just about implementation. And that's where we think real leverage and momentum comes from.
So if I spent 5 hours, so if I'm doing consulting work, just as an example, because I thought about this Saturday night in preparation to have this conversation with you today. I said, if I spent 5 hours, and it was a little more than 5 hours, but let's just say 5 hours, and let's put the money behind it because it's important for people to see the value. I spent 5 hours doing a task that I could have paid somebody else $50 to do. Okay. So I reduced my hourly rate to $10 an hour. That was the value of my time because I did it myself. Now, not only did I reduce my potential earning opportunities to $10 an hour, but on top of that, I lost the opportunity to do other things that could have produced more fruit in my business.
And
Whatever.
that's the big thing. That's way more painful than the $50 you could have wasted. It's the lack of progress. It's the lack of momentum because you just completed a $50 task and that's all you got.
So in the end, I could have spent time putting together an email marketing campaign for lead gen. I could have done consulting work, which pays me $250 an hour. So let's look at the real loss. I lost no less than a potential of $1,250 just based on it if I were just to do consulting for one of my clients.
Oh, absolutely.
But on top of that, I lost the opportunity to lead gen for 5 hours, which could have produced how many new clients? Let's say it only produced one new client that was going to pay me a retainer of $3,000 a month over the course of a year, right? I just lost $36,000 if I had just used that time more wisely, or if I'd been smarter and I'd held myself to task.
Yeah, it's the old farmer analogy, right? You can go pick an apple and you've got one apple to eat for that moment, or you can go plant an apple tree and have apples for the rest of your life, right? So how much is an apple worth? Well, it depends on how many trees you have, right? One apple is not worth very much. One banner ad to create it, you don't really have a whole, because as soon as you're done, now what? You're
Right.
done. You've got to, so it's about planting those seeds. And that to me is what working on your business really means, is what you're describing there, that you want your work to pay off in the future. You want to plant seeds today so that tomorrow you don't have to do the same things over and over and over again and be stuck in those low level tasks, paying yourself $10 an hour.
Sure. So a funny story that goes all the way back to the agency side of, I went into this whole thing and I did everything wrong. Okay. And I tell everybody that I did everything wrong because every task that I look at from the beginning of gaining traction within the agency side, I literally did everything wrong, or I could have done everything better. Okay. So I went out and hired a whole bunch of people. And then I hired one of my friend's wives to be our office person, office manager, if you want to call it, because titles are important, right? And her job was to get the conference room ready. If we had people coming in, make sure that the printers had paper, whatever that looked like, all of the mundane tasks. And I think I was paying her like $18 an hour. Okay. So the one morning we had clients coming in and I was paying, $38,000 a month for office space at that point in time. $38,000 a month, which is stupid, right? I mean, that's just stupid.
It's a lot of money in office space.
And so we had these people coming in and we had this open floor plan so I could look out. I strategically placed my office, or my office was the one where I could look out my window and see everybody working, because I'm a control freak. I mean, absolute control freak. And so I sent a message because it was only about 15 minutes before this client was supposed to walk in the door, and they were a fairly large company. So I sent out, she was supposed to be putting water in the conference room, for whoever, just getting everything ready. And I put out, I sent her an email and I can see her, right? I can literally see her, and she's having a conversation with 4 or 5 other employees, which means that the conversation that she's having isn't just reducing her time to zero or production value to zero, but the other 4 or 5 people also aren't working. So my productivity is 5x'd or 6x'd into zero. Okay. So I sent her a message. I could hear the ding go off on her computer, and she turned around and looked at it. And what I asked for was, could you bring me some paper and some writing utensils, okay, into my office in the next 5 minutes or whatever it was, because I was trying to jumpstart that process of going from 0 to even 2% of productivity. And I watched her turn around and she dismissed the email, right? And then she turned back around and continued her conversation. So I sent her a follow-up email and I said, I really need this right now. And then and she dismissed that again. So I walked out and I said, hey, such and such, not going to name names, but I said, I really need that. And she came in and I said, why didn't you do that task, that simple task? And she said, well, I didn't know what kind of paper you wanted. And I said, any paper you can find. Well, I don't know what kind of pen you want to use. And I said, all of them that you can find, right? Because this is just a task of production. So she comes back and I said, I need this literally in the next 60 seconds. And she came back and I said, okay, I want you to write your name. And she said, well, which one should I use? I said, pick whatever paper you want to use. Okay. I said, pick whatever pen you want to use. I want you to write your name. And then I want you to write today's date on it. Oh, okay. And I said, underneath that, I want you to write, you're fired. Okay. What? I said, I asked you to do a very mundane task and you found every reason to not do that, potentially at the ultimate sacrifice of us landing a new client who's going to be here in 8 minutes. And you think that your workday and sharing with your friends and building camaraderie and doing Facebook and all of this other stuff is more important than what drives the revenue of our business. So I'm going to go ahead and need you to collect your things and leave. Okay. So she leaves, and needless to say, I'm not friends with that friend anymore because he took his wife's side. But in the end, it was, how much productivity do I actually get? And I'm about to lead into something. If she was making $18 an hour, quick math, let's just say 20 times 40 is $800 a week. $800 a week times 52, she's getting paid over $40,000 a year to make sure that there's water in the conference room, that everything is done. And she's finding every reason at that point not to even do that for a fairly overwhelming salary, if you will, for what those tasks are. So one of the carrots that I think that you drive is the ability to, one, not only create, have those tasks done for you and I'm going to go back to your business model. So have those tasks done for you, those mundane tasks that nobody really wants to do and they're neglected. But then there's also the extreme value of not having to pay the payroll, the health insurance, the 401ks, and the lack of productivity because you're managing that. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a few steps there. One is, you mentioned how mundane those tasks are, but clearly they're important or you wouldn't have had so much maybe emotion behind her getting that done, right? Like if that hadn't been important for her to get done, you wouldn't have let her go, right? Because it wouldn't have mattered to you in any way. So even though they're mundane tasks, it's still ancillary. It's still super important for those things to go. So we look at every task, whether it's mundane or super powerful, in that it's high revenue generating activity, as something that's important in the business. It's just not important for you to do it.
Sure.
Right, which is why you had somebody in place there. So that's why we start with the end in mind, and we truly define what success looks like. And the first thing that we do as a company is map out all of those steps, the systems and process for everything to happen. I know it's just paper. I know it's just pens. I know it's just a process to get people in the conference room. But when we have a checklist and a well-defined structure of what that's supposed to look like, now it's this whole idea of managing people and managing outcomes and managing people's term. Well, it starts with having those clearly defined systems process steps mapped out, which is what we do that heavy lifting for you so that success is defined. And not only success is defined, but how we get there is also defined. So then managing for you, Bradley, becomes so much easier because now we've got a roadmap. I like to think of it as like the bumpers in the bowling alley, right? You can't screw it up. You may not knock down all 10 pins perfectly, but you're going to get 7 or 8 of them every single time. And it doesn't matter how many times you hit the bumpers, right? So the bumpers is kind of your path.
I'm going to tell you a funny story that you brought up bowling. Okay. That literally I tell everybody I am the worst bowler in the history of the world, that my best bowling score is a 57 with those bumper things up. Okay, so I don't know what it is, but I can throw the ball down that alley, okay, and it'll bounce off probably 12, 14 times before it ever gets to the end. and I'll still only ever end up with one pin.
How many would you get without the bumpers?
Zero. I mean,
right. Yeah. And that's how I look at management. We're all zeros as managers because we don't have any bumpers in the bowling alley. And I'm not a great manager either. I feel like I'm a very good leader in my organization, but I'm not a good manager. So without the bumpers in the bowling alley, it just becomes so much more difficult, in my opinion. So that's the first thing that we do is those systems and process build out.
And that's you guys are the bumper, right? So you're providing that bumper that doesn't allow the gutter ball to happen, which is important for people to realize. That if I took my original agency and you know, spending hundreds of thousands of dollars a month in payroll, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and all of this stuff, and then all of a sudden I'm dealing with Susie's sick cat. I'm dealing with you know, all of these atrocious things. And I tell everybody that I don't specialize, you know, I'm former military, right? So I don't understand what I call the pathetic emotions, which are sympathetic, empathetic, or any other pathetic emotion. So I literally, I woke up one day and I realized that 60 or 80% of my day was spent dealing with people, and Susie's sick cat, and Wendy's grandpa that died, and maybe it was her fifth or sixth grandpa, because I don't know. I don't really pay attention to how many grandpas somebody has. And that's a true story that I won't tell. But, you know, literally had an employee that went to 5 grandfathers' funerals. And finally I brought her in and I said, how many grandpas do you have? You know what I mean? I just need to look forward from a productivity standpoint to know how many more times. And she only worked for me for like 2 years, and 5 of her grandpas died. I'm like, you know, what is this crap? But I want to flip gears for a moment, because, or change gears, because there's something important that needs to be stated, and I'm going to ramp up to this. So I made a decision to get rid of my full-time employees and that payroll and everything else. And I made the mistake of thinking that I could hire VAs from all over the place, okay, to do all of those tasks. And that's when I realized that I was a bad manager.
Yep.
Okay. So I think it's important that one, people can try and do what you do. They can go to onlinejobs.ph. They can hire a Filipino army to do all of the things that they do. But what they're going to find is they're going to shortly realize that they're in a position where they're actually doing just as much work trying to manage those people. And then there's failures that are going to happen along the way, and they're going to blame those VAs. But at some point, they're going to realize that the failure is staring at them in the mirror.
Yeah. So after the first step of us mapping out your systems and process and putting a lot of structure in place, the second step becomes a whole lot easier, which is putting the right person in place to complete that task. And with our infrastructure, what we do is we're screening over 4,000 applications a month. We're hiring less than 2% of those people. Then they come onto our platform for it's 4 to 8 weeks, depending on the role and what they're doing, but through a training and naturalization process, so that we can profile and we do all the things that you would want done for your business to make sure that resume screening, background checks, drug screening, all those types of things. We have huge infrastructure around that recruitment process to make sure we get the right people in the program. And then we have a world-class training program to make sure that they know exactly what they're doing. So it truly is a plug and play based on the skill set to that job description. So if we just mapped out, for example, you know, agencies are usually great at fulfillment. You know your business really well. But all the stuff around it, like your inside sales, answering the phone on the front end, qualifying customers, making sure that by the time they get to you that they're truly qualified. They know you guys have a 2-year commitment now, Bradley, within your agency, right? So you don't need to be talking to a potential client who's only once a month contract or a 2-week project and those types of things. So there's a lot of things that happen, whether it's inside sales and then on the back end fulfillment. Take customer support, for example. We work with a lot of agencies that are great at fulfillment, but they're not that great at customer support. And so their perception of their brand is diminished because they don't do a great job of answering the phone and responding to chatbots and because it's a lot of work. And we make people jump through these hoops because, you know, we've got so many things to do. And I see these autoresponder emails all the time. That's like, I check my emails between these hours and we'll follow up within 24 hours. But all that does is make the customer feel insignificant and unimportant. right? And so there's lots of ways in the day to day that businesses fail, and it not really from not wanting to or not trying or not having a great business. It's about the execution implementation. So having the right people to fulfill those roles is step two, and that's where we just plug and play. And all the details around that's exactly what you're talking about. There's no HR, there's no liabilities. We're helping you manage. We stay with you for the life of the account once you stay up. It's $10 to sign on, right? It's $10 an hour, but it's just a service contract. It's a month-to-month service contract. If there's not a ton of value, then you don't have to keep that going, right? So all the HR W-2 bull that comes with hiring people, we like to just scratch through that and just be the easy button to implementation.
So let's put that soup to nuts, because you just put a whole bunch of information out there, right? I mean, you just literally blasted a whole bunch of information, and I'd love to think that everybody who watches this is going to pick up everything that you just said. So let's break that down. If we parallel everything that you just said to the standardized marketing funnel of digital, of awareness, consideration, decision, delight.
Exactly.
You're actually allowing your services to potentially engage with 3 of the 4 of those.
Exactly.
So you can make people aware of the product. You can have somebody pounding the phones, emails, all of these things, getting lead gen, doing the front end that no agency worker wants to do.
Yeah, jumping in Facebook, working LinkedIn, responding in the groups, adding value, creating content, all that top line stuff that people just drop the ball because it takes so much work to be consistent doing that. Absolutely. Yeah, you need to have somebody doing that all the time.
And then you can work within the consideration phase, right? Because now you're gaining that top level and you're warming up those potential leads or prospects or whoever it is, and doing all of the tasks surrounding that, making sure that the touch points. And I'm going to give you kudos, because I think it's Mary that kept sending me emails, right?
Yeah, Marianne, right. Right, because Bradley, who do you care about? Do you care about me and RocketStation, or do you care about you and Ginger Hippo?
Well,
you care about your stuff, right?
Yeah,
and so our job is to make you important and special and valuable, right? And by doing that, we have a good relationship, right? So that's what that mid-level for us in that marketing funnel you're talking about. When you can engage people and show that you care about them and their interests, meaning you're providing information to them that is specific and valuable to them, now all of a sudden your conversions through that funnel just go through the roof because you're engaged in a more meaningful way.
Right, without a doubt. So that leads me to, now you've taken care of those 2 arms, and you've put the agency owner in a position where they're maintaining that role within the decision phase of whoever that prospect is. And then you can also count on them, because I tell everybody that the biggest failure that I see, not falter, but absolute ridiculous failure that happens within agencies, is that we always assume that our clients are satisfied until they tell us that we're not, or that they're not.
Right.
So you can pick up after the decision phase. That agency owner is doing the work, and then you guys are coming in on the back end doing the delight phase, saying, hey, could you take this poll with us, or poll from us, or survey, and how are some of these things going, or whatever that looks like, and re-engage and maybe do referral programs. So the last show we talked about the sales process and how underutilized the referral systems are within agencies. And I gave an example that one of my clients, I was paying them. Not only had they earned referral bonuses for the amount of their monthly contract that they were paying us, but at the end of the month, I was cutting them a check for all of the referrals that they had sent us.
Yeah, because you have a great relationship with them, right? You're adding value in that, and that's we totally see that too. Relationships is what it's all about. But if you're putting so many hoops and jumps and hurdles and things for people to go through, that's a terrible feeling. It's a terrible relationship. So the reason Marianne exists is to make me look good. I can't respond to every email. I can't, just like for us to schedule this call. I mean, I think it's 6, 7, 8, 9 emails. Just to get some booked because you're busy. I was on vacation in Utah. We had some things going on. I mean, that on average, I think it's 9 to 11 emails to schedule one appointment. I can either put a bunch of things in place to make it hard for you to get on my calendar, or Marianne can just handle that. And all of a sudden, I look better as a result, right? So customer support, that back info, we talk about net promoter score all the time. I don't know an agency who doesn't have some form of net promoter score, even if they're not using it directly. But I
Mhm.
mean, like, look at your Google reviews, look at your reputation management. You're talking about those referrals. Those people can be giving you reviews online and giving you 5 star. And then when people Google you, it changes the perception of your brand by just
Yep.
having somebody do it. You feel bigger, you feel more powerful, you feel more impactful, you feel more important as a brand by just having that reputation management in place, from referrals to net promoter scores to getting people to leave reviews. And then all of a sudden, brother, you're not having to be the one to ask for it. You're not having to say, hey, will you go, which people rarely do, right? So it takes some work, it takes some effort. All of those things, it's time consuming. And that's
Right.
what it really comes down to. It is just simply time consuming. It's not
And
that it's necessarily hard, it just takes a lot of time. So we think that you should not be the one doing it, but somebody should be absolutely doing those tasks.
so the other issue that I see with agency owners is they will tend to be more passionate, and I was guilty of this. They're more passionate about themselves than other people are passionate about them, right? I
That's
don't.
all of us as business owners. We all think we're more important than we are,
So
right?
I'll give you, and it's something completely unrelated to agency work, but I had this guy who was hounding me for a phone call to do accounting, and he's been hounding me literally just spamming my email 3 times a day for probably the last 6 months. Well, one, I already have an accountant. I mean, I have an entire accounting firm for the different businesses that I have, but in the agency side is the most insignificant or the smallest portion of what I do now. I've transcended into different things or different areas, and I don't really care if I ever take on a new client as from an agency side, right? That is just the truth of it. I'm past that point. But after, I think it was last week, my phone rang, and the guy, I answered the phone because I didn't know who it was, and somehow he got my personal cell phone number. Good for him, right? And I answered the phone, and he said, "This is Ian, and why haven't you returned my emails?" I said, "Because you're not that important." And all of a sudden there was this long pause, and I said, "Look, bud, I know you think you're that important, and I appreciate you going into that go-getter, that you're going after all of these things, but in reality you're barking up a tree, you're barking up the wrong tree, or you're going after the wrong lead, because I have no interest in what you're sending me emails for, because if I did, I would have responded to the first 500 emails that you sent me." Right? And there was this long pause, and he said, "Well, how can I help you?" I said, "Now we're having a conversation." You know what I mean? So I think that and the reason why I'm pointing this out is because I think the business owner falls into a trap where they're so passionate and they're so driven, and they're doing it, and so they're doing all of these other peripheral things. And you could tell that he was
Exactly.
email that I was somebody who will never become a client of his. But he was so desperate that as the owner, he picked up the phone to call me directly. And that was a prospect that is never going to turn into a lead or a client, because I don't need what he has. And how many hours did he waste chasing after me for the last 6 months to get nothing in the end? And I think most of the young agency owners fall into that trap. So if they're using your services and all of those things are happening, I could tell at the end of that phone call that I had just literally exhausted all of the wind out of his sales, out of his proverbial sales, SAILS, right? That he had nursed me as a lead to the point where he said, "I'm going to get this guy, and he fits my demographic of, whatever that demographic is, or whatever those things are." And how much thought process and time was wasted into successfully achieving nothing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. And it doesn't matter the business, whether you're an agency owner with like us at the BPO, or, real estate, or nonprofits. I don't know anybody who got into those businesses truly to just do those. But even if you have a passion for it, even if you love it, it's still a vehicle. It's still a tool. The agency is a vehicle to a better life. Most people want to be good dads and sons and better husbands, and they want to go on vacation and come back and there be more money in the bank account than when they left. It's about building a legacy wealth. It's about it, not even if you don't care about passing down. Like, I mean, controlling your time and building a business that sustains the lifestyle that you're trying to accomplish. And the story you just gave is that business owner, it's so common. We see it all the time. They do everything in the day to day. You get lack of momentum. And then it's just an energy suck. It's a drain. And you don't have time at the end of the day to do all the things that are actually meaningful and important to you. Right.
Sure.
And whether that's spending time with your friends or, spend time with your hobbies, whatever that may be. Right. Like I like to play golf with my family. We spend the evenings. We'll go just play a couple holes, walk the course as a family, just kind of walk, play golf. And just, it's not about the golf. It's about spending time together. Right.
Sure.
It's about being able to talk and fellowship with each other and just hang out. So if I was doing every single thing in my business, I wouldn't have the emotional energy, emotional capacity to actually do the things I care about in my life. Right. So that's what hurts me about hearing those stories that you just told me about that guy is he's doing the best he can to build the business that supports the life he's trying to accomplish. But those tasks that he's actually doing are the going direct opposite of what he's trying to accomplish. Right. And so that's why with that two-step approach of just having clear defined systems and processes and then having people pull those levers and push the knobs, that's not you on the mundane tasks that you keep mentioning. Now you can go to bed at night not feeling guilty. And guess what? Your business will grow and you'll do all the things that you're trying to do just from simply not having to do every single thing. Because the truth is, you get to the point, Bradley, where you don't really do anything very well when you're doing everything yourself. You think you're doing it well, but you're really just doing everything just barely good at all.
The best one that I did that was a complete failure on my end was I decided to take a vacation with my girlfriend probably 4 years ago now to Cancun, right? So we do all of this stuff, and I knew that I was going to have to work while I was on vacation. So I actually brought her best friend with us, separate rooms, all of that stuff, right? I mean, I don't want to get into this weird, whatever, right? But I said, okay, so when I don't have time because I'm doing work to go do the things that she wants to do, or, selfishly, if she wants to go do things like go ride horses, and I hate horses and they hate me equally, I can send her girlfriend with her and they can go have the time of their lives and everybody's happy, right?
Yeah.
So we spent a week, 7 days in Cancun, and I worked 5 of those.
Right.
Full time. Right. I was putting in 8-10 hours, calling this prospective client because I was working on a big deal, right? And literally this deal would have been millions of dollars had we landed that. And that's the key word. We didn't land it. Okay. Yep. So I spent so much time, wasted 5/7, whatever that equation is, in a percentage, but 5 days out of 7 were spent full time working on something that I could work on from home. Yeah. And not enjoyed that time on the beach. So at the end of that entire vacation, I looked back, didn't land the client. The client went with somebody else, and it was a huge contract. So, and I was on vacation, and my girlfriend, even though I brought her friend with her, and nobody had a good time. And what was
not the time you were expecting, right? It's not, and kind of like, so then it's like, what was the point? What was the point of any of it? Right. And so, yeah, that story is exactly the opposite of what we want to happen. Right. And the truth is, brother, that story reflects almost everyone that we talk to, even big companies that have lots. If you're not structured, if you don't have a lot of intention about the way that you're scheduling your days and your task management, the teams that are in place, that's the norm, man. And your willingness to be vulnerable and share those stories is just super powerful, because that's what most people are going through. That's how most of us feel. That's why I got into this business, because that was me. I went on vacation to Greece several years ago, 2012 or whatever. The entire time I was there, I was on my email trying to do deals. I was trying to work while I was there, because I knew when I came home, I couldn't be 2 weeks behind. So, I mean, I have been there, but there's not, to me, looking back on it, it's like I wasted that entire trip to Greece. We went to 3 amazing cities, Mykonos, Santorini, and Athens. And to be honest with you, I don't even remember a ton of it. I remember about half of it because I was working the whole time. And that was is just silly. It makes no sense whatsoever. So it really is anti to what we're trying to accomplish as entrepreneurs and business owners. So
I
that
remember
is why we exist, to eliminate that.
we went to Chichen Itza. We took a day trip to Chichen Itza while we were in Cancun. And I remember spending 30 minutes harassing the people at Chichen Itza to get them to give me the password to their Wi-Fi. Okay. So we're at Chichen Itza and I'm like, no, I need your Wi-Fi password
Yeah.
because I have emails to whatever. And literally the girls walked around and literally there's one part of Chichen Itza. If you haven't been there, I encourage everybody to go, but there's like this roped off area where they did this dig and they uncovered part of the pyramid thing or whatever, and it's roped off so that you don't fall in the hole, which is like a 20-foot hole. Well, I'm on my phone emailing, walking behind the girls, and next thing I know, I'm on the other side of the rope and they're yelling at me, "You're about to fall in, dumbass." Right?
Right.
It's just so frustrating. But
yeah, we were sitting there watching the sunset in Santorini, and one of the hotel staff walked up to me and asked me why I was on my phone. And that was 10 years ago, and it still stuck with me because what was I doing, right? It made no sense. So that is literally that feeling of man, just like, oh, that, I mean, we've eliminated through structure, systems, processes, and then just putting the right people in place to take care of that, right? Like if I go on vacation today and I'm not messing with my phone, not because there's not important stuff going on, but just because we have structure in place to eliminate the chaos for me. Like that's not what it's about. When I'm on vacation, I'm on vacation. I may casually respond to an email, but the truth is that's probably Marianne responding on my behalf to make me look better than I am, right? So yeah, those stories are so common, Bradley, but that is the life of the entrepreneur, the business owner that we're trying to nix. We can put you in a great spot. We can give you your life back if you're willing to do it, right? And so the technology today is amazing. Everything's done online. We're sitting here having this call online. Everybody's familiar with Zoom. You've got internet, you've got cloud-based storage for everything. There's really no excuse, especially people in the agency world. There's no excuse for that whatsoever. It just takes a willingness to put the structure in place to make it happen.
So today, fast forward to today, my do not disturb is on for 23 hours and 59 minutes every day. Okay, on my phone. That if you are not in my contact list, my phone doesn't ring and you go right to email, right? That solves so many problems for me. But in the last few minutes of us talking, I have two very key points that I want to ask you about your business. The first one is features, advantages, and benefits, obviously, right? Which we've kind of discussed, but I want that, just dig right in. And then probably the most important thing that people are going to ask that I'm hoping you'll answer is, what do you do and what don't you do? Right? Because it's let's assume I'm sold, right? And I want to hand you all of these different tasks that I need handled. What does that look like in your world for what makes sense and then what doesn't? Because go ahead.
But the first part of that, the features, benefits, there's nothing that we do that you can't do on your own. You can go recruit, screen, do resume checks and background check and drug screening and personality profile and train. You can do everything that we do on your own. We're just the easy button, and you're going to have a lot more success doing it with us because we're truly experts in workforce management. We can time study your business. We can know exactly what's happening. So people ask you all the time, well, what if I need multiple tasks and multiple things, and I need somebody to answer the phone, but I'll also do some reconciliation of the books at the end of the month and also do a little. That's super common, right? Most companies aren't big enough to have one person doing one task all day long. I mean, very few companies are of that size. So part of the features and benefits is that we're truly experts in this. We're workforce management experts. So we have huge infrastructure on all the things that make it hard to get the right person in place and then manage them successfully. So I mentioned 4,000 resumes a month, and we're hiring less than 2%. So that means we're getting the best of the best. So you can go try to compete with us, but good luck, because we've got a ton invested making sure that we're getting the right people in place to be able to support you. So the real benefit is the emotional capacity you get back from working with us. So going to do it yourself, you can run through a wall every single day. It's going to take more energy and effort than you probably have, and you're not going to be very good at it anyway. So we truly are the easy button to have a great person there. And then more features and benefits. It's a service contract. It's a $10 an hour service contract that's month to month. So if we're not adding massive value to your business, it's not a relationship. So that, there's other features and benefits there, but really what it's about is, we had a client in Memphis call us one day because it snowed in Memphis a couple of years ago for the first time like ever. And they didn't have a single person show up to work except for our staff was there, and they had no interruption through their fulfillment and customer support because they were leveraging us. Had they not used our teams, it would have been a disaster. So he sent me a text that said, and I wish I'd pulled it because I quote it for you. He said, the millions of dollars we're saving in payroll is huge, but the emotional capacity I get back, the energy that I have to put back into my business because I'm not worrying about all those things, is the reason we stay with you guys. So that to me was the best compliment I could ever get, because the teams are performing, but it's really about empowering businesses to do what they were designed to do. That is the ultimate benefit that we provide.
You're actually saving them money. So I'm going to add a little bit to that, because one of the things that I learned from the business owner standpoint is if I hired somebody at $60,000 a year, I was going to end up spending 80 based on health insurance, 401ks, all of these other things. So when you look at the cost of an employee and you're in that position where you're too busy, maybe you're a one-person shop, okay, and you're getting ready to where you think you have to hire that first employee, my recommendation and my advice would be don't. Right. So I get those questions all the time. Hey, I'm in this position and I'm too busy and blah, blah, blah. And I really need, what should I do next? And I tell them, I literally tell them, don't hire an employee. That will be the very first largest mistake you make. Is one, you're probably going to hire 10 to find one that you want to keep around, and their productivity is going to be shit in the end because, you aren't training them well. Right. So there's so many different facets to what you guys are doing, especially from the training, accountability management, all of that stuff that business owner doesn't have to do at a value of $400 a week. Right. If it's a 40.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And then it's just flat fee, right? Like you mentioned, there's not all the added expenses that come in from payroll taxes and Medicaid withholdings and all the things that have to happen in order for employment structure. And we have employees in our Dallas office. We're headquartered in Dallas. We have, I think, 6 employees there now, and it's managing over 600 team members outside of that office. So we do have some W-2s, but in my world, the way we look at it is, if you're going to be W-2'd in our office, you're going to have a big salary and you're going to absolutely be worth it. And there's a specific reason for that. Outside of that, we don't have there's no, you're talking about values and benefit. We don't really have a value or a need for anything outside of that. Because to answer the second part of your question, which is what do we not do? The only thing we don't do is technology coding. So we'll do level 1 customer support for IT, meaning we can do product walkthroughs. We can reset your username and password. We do all the things that, it's really hard on the IT side to fulfill those things, but the only thing we really don't do is code. So and then super high level sales. So we don't like to actually be the ones to swipe the credit cards for $30,000 products or things like that, right? So it's everything essentially in a business today is done on a phone or computer. Technology is so amazing. That's one of the coolest things about running a business in 2020 and going forward is technology is incredible. And the amount of companies out there like StreamYard hosting this call that allow us to just function and move in a very seamless way throughout the day. The technology is incredible. So anything done on a phone or computer, from sales to marketing, to customer support, to back office administrative tasks, because the number of things that it takes to run the office in the day-to-day, it's just so many things. Everything done on a phone or computer, we do, except for coding technology products.
Sure. And that's wonderful to know, because the last story I'll share is a friend of mine who is fairly successful in a one-person business here locally, actually invited me to go look at his new office space. Probably, I want to say it was right before COVID hit. And I was like, man, I'm so happy for you. He's like, I'm just so proud, that I'm growing and all this other stuff. And I want to show you what I'm doing. And so I showed up and I look at his office space. And it's a beautiful office space, probably, I don't know, 1,200 square feet. And his name is Rob too. So don't take this the wrong way. But I said, Rob, I said, this is beautiful. How many employees do you have? And he said, well, none. And I said, so you're a one-person show and you need office space, 1,200 square feet of office space, and you don't have any employees. He said, no, but I'm going to hire them. And I said, why? Why are you putting forth all of these expenditures into your business? And he's like, man, I really thought you'd be happy for me. And I said, no, I said, dude, you're the dumbest smart guy I've ever met. You know what I mean? That literally you have this great thing and now you entered into a 1-year lease agreement for no employees that you now have to fill an office space that you're going to spend thousands upon thousands of dollars paying for substandard labor. And you're just going to go through this hiring process. And the whole reason you're doing this is because you don't have enough time to be more successful.
Yeah, and now today they probably couldn't even come to office depending on the state where you are and what's going on, because the liability as a business owner of bringing employees into the office, my insurance companies are telling us to be careful, right? We can't force our team members. It's just one more HR liability in the pandemic that we're in, is because we're unsure about how insurance companies are going to respond to this. So it's just one more liability in your business, in my opinion. So, I mean, with that, like, we like to look at workforce management, the team, rather than a liability, it needs to be a true asset. And that's what go back to the features and benefits. Our team members, what we provide is a true value add asset to your business. And we eliminate the liability that comes with traditionally having to hire people the way your buddy was thinking about doing it.
So how do people get a hold of you? How do they start that process if they make the decision that they trust me enough to bring on good people and they want to take that next step? How does that work?
Yeah, the best way to do that, I mean, anybody can go to our website, RocketStation.com, check us out. We've got lots of great information there. Some of the sharks from Shark Tank are starting to promote us and put some stuff on there. So there's some really great information on there for anybody that's looking. But if you're honest and sincere about this process, we're happy to spend a little bit of time with you, whether you hire our teams or not. Because a lot of people, the first question is, hey, I understand what you're talking about. It makes sense, but how does that apply to me? What can you do for me and my business specifically? That's why we just like to spend a little bit of time with you and what we call just a discovery call. And our business development team, I mentioned, are workforce management experts. I'm going to volunteer a little bit of their time to anybody that's listening and that wants to ask a few questions and see how this potentially could apply to them. Just email us. Email Greg Brooks, BROOKS, at RocketStation.com. Tell us you heard me on your podcast, and we'll be happy to spend some time with you. You don't have to hire our teams for us to be willing to help you out. And that's kind of, I think, the best gift I could offer anybody that's listening to your podcast. Just email Brooks, BROKS, at RocketStation.com, and we'll spend a few minutes answering any questions that you have.
That's awesome. Well, I know you're short on time, so I want to appreciate your being here, and I don't want to run you right up to that hard stop that we talked about. So any other last thoughts of give everybody a nugget, right? If they came to you and they said, hey, I just started an agency 2 months ago, what would be the first thing you told them to do, whether it's relative to your business or not?
Yeah, the first thing I think anybody should do is take some time every single week to look at the task you're actually doing all day. And that usually means at the end of every day, you need to actually write down what you did today, because very few of us can think about 2-3 days ago what we did during the day because we're just so busy doing so much. So if you're really busy and you have a lot going on, you owe it to yourself to really look at how you're spending time all day. You mentioned just $10 an hour task. What that does is allow you a lot of insight into say, man, I'm charging people X number of dollars. You mentioned $250 an hour for consulting. but I'm doing $10 an hour task all day, right? So without stopping to, some people call it time blocking, and time blocking sounds overwhelming because you have to sit there and do it all day, every day. And most people don't have time to time block, right?
Sure, sure.
But we think that, I mean, if you'll just at the end of each day, write down what you did that day, just take a journal. I keep mine with me at all times. It's just sitting right here on my desk. At the end of every day, I write down what I did all day and how many hours I spent on that. That's the gives you so much transparency into what you're actually doing. And it'll allow you to stop hiding, because so many of us hide behind being busy. And
Mhm.
being busy should not be a badge of honor. It should be an opportunity for improvement. And so just spend some time looking at what you do all day. It'll give you a ton of insight into where you're spending all your time. And from there, you can then take that sick feeling that you have in your stomach because you know how much time you're spending on stuff you shouldn't be doing. And we can help you get structured and take a lot of those things off your plate.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you being here. And I want to do another follow up based on specific, work product tasks at some point. It
Oh, I
doesn't
would love that. That'd be great.
it doesn't have to be next week or even next month. But as I'm developing this show and trying to move into different stages, I think you're going to fit into that perfectly.
I
Um,
love that. Thank you for having me on. I mean, I've watched all the episodes, and I love what you're doing, and I love how vulnerable and raw you are. And you're not a real politically correct person, Bradley, but that's okay because you're adding value to people, and I appreciate what you're doing, and I appreciate you having me on.
let's do it again soon.
Thanks a lot, man.
Thanks, Rob.